Okay, so this is a kind of an update video. I'm getting to the point where I want to do a fresh walkthrough for the new year, but I've still got a couple moving pieces and a couple maintenance things I've been working on. So up until, let me switch to the board here. Up until, I guess just most recent couple days, what I've been doing is I've been using a buffered splitter here, one end going down to the AC15, the other end going directly into the Trio, which then feeds the rest of my wet effects. Today it happens to be the HX Effects. I have the Zoya and the Mood both in independent loops in there, so I can move them around in the signal chain if I need to. Nothing major there, just a slight difference. But to do that, I was splitting out of this and going through the Fairfax as my amp prior to it going into the Trio. But I brought back the Nano Cortex mainly because it's just so nice to be able to download different amp captures and kind of get an idea for what that amp might be like. As I've alluded to in a number of my videos recently, or at least a couple, I've been kind of letting that Rycooder thing influence me, which the rabbit hole we go down now. The guitar I'm using right now, hang on, let me switch back, is my Extra. Now, when I first had this guitar built, which I think was, I can't remember if it was 2001 or 2003, but early 2000s, I was still playing 12s, and I was still playing 12s with a wound G. I've since discovered that DR makes the DDT strings. I don't have a package. I just finally switched this back to 12s. This guitar was built and the nut was cut for 12s. But I've since found these Cootercaster style pickups through Gemini Pickups. And I found that in chasing this Rycoodery kind of tone, he uses a lot of those open tunings, which is one of the open G is you've got your E's tuned down to D, and then your A tuned down to G. And I'm right now I'm not in the mood for relearning all my positions in an open tuning. So what I did is I just decided I've got these 12s, 12 through 60 on here. They're big ones. It's not a wound G, but I have it tuned, the whole thing tuned down to D, which gives you kind of that extra thickness or that extra something that you might notice. You might attribute to tubes and fancy analog gear, but really I think it's more the tuning. Yes, all the other gear does matter, but in this particular case, that's what's going on with this guitar. This guitar is going to live in D now with 12s on it, and it was made to be strung with 12s, which is great. It really does bring the guitar alive when you have those big strings vibrating on here. But one of my other maintenance things I finally got around to is on my, hang on, let me switch cameras again. On my PR5, my Morgan PR5, I had a 6V6 GT in the power section, and it was mainly because, nothing was available when I needed to replace the tube in that. So I finally got a 6V6S and put it in there, and yes, it made a difference. So I played it in the room, and man, I got to stop playing my amps in a room because then everything else seems inadequate. There's just nothing like a live amp in a room. But in any case, I'm going out of that into the power load today, into the SSL6. Channel 1 here is left side, and that is the analog cab sim. And channel 2 is the right side, and that is the IR cab sim. And I'm using, that's whatever the stock 2.1 is. You can look it up if you really want to know what IR that is. So I've got my regular front end, which has all my gain in it. And the other thing I should note is I've decided the Fairfax I like before the Mustang GT because I can use the Mustang GT to help open up the sound a little bit with it. It works better in that order. As you can see, I'm doing the 1073 thing in cranking the level and then using the tone and the gain as my actual level controls, which right now is working pretty good. And then I'm going into that and I'm splitting it. One end's going to the Nano Cortex, running a Filmo sound capture. I'm going into the 810 cabinet that came stock with the Nano Cortex. One of these days I'll dig around and find more IRs and find more that I like. There aren't many IRs out there that I really like, though, to be honest. In any case, and then it's going back into the wet side here. And then the other side's going down to the PR5. So let me put this camera up top, mute the mic, and have a little jam. See what this thing sounds like. Definitely getting some noise out of the PR5, which not only doesn't surprise me, but I'm still going to finish this jam. right, so the Pedal 76 rears its ugly head again. Give me a moment, I gotta switch it. Enjoy some ambient semi-generative goodness. Much better, not the PR5. All right, just a little fix on the Kambology XT reverb on the back end. All right, so I had to obviously make a hot swap here with the compressor. I kind of prefer optical anyway. It's just the transformers in that Pedal 76 are really nice sounding. But as much as I want to love that thing, I'm really getting sick of it picking up that noise, and that's not compression bringing up the noise floor. That's noise. Now these pickups, they're lacquer potted single coil pickups, so unless I got my hand on the strings, that's not the noise I'm talking about. And it should be apparent in this recording. I don't know what it is. It's a grounding issue, whatever it might be. I ain't dealing with it. So that's okay. I like the OB1. I kind of prefer optical compression for this stage. I am using an LA2A after the Nano Cortex here, prior to the wet effects, just to give it a little more a better signal to play with, because there's a lot of different things that are dependent on the signal at that point. But PR5 sounds way better with that tube in it, and I've been lazy about it because I haven't been really using, even when I had just the torpedo captor, I really wasn't using my amps. I was still messing around with either the Nano Cortex or the GT1000 Core. But in any case, worked out great. The next experiment I think I want to try is to see if I can do a 2 amp setup instead of using 1 amp and using the analog amp sim or cab sim as well as the IR and hard panning them out of phase, kind of like a JC120, which is what you just heard there. I think I might want to try doing 2 amps, just one on one side, one on the other, but not wet dry. This isn't really wet dry either, to be honest. Now, channels 1 and 2 are the front end here, which is compression and gain into the amp, and then through the reactive load box into the mixer. So it is kind of a dry side. And then starting with the Nano Cortex, and that's probably the other thing I'll comment on is the Filmo sound. Capture I found is pretty damn good. There's another one that's that really thick low end Filmo sound that I do want to experiment with a little bit. I don't know if that warrants a video, but this one's a much more open and clean and clear sounding Filmo sound, and it really fed, and I'm going to anticipate it's going to sound good when I listen back to this. But it's a nice clean signal feeding my wet side here, which is what I want. A nice round, full frequency. I'll let the power load be my limited frequency cabinet sim stuff, but I really do want all of these effects here because it's more than just delay. I want the full frequency spectrum to be represented on my wet side because there's so much semi-generative stuff going on. I don't want to lose any of that through some crappy guitar speaker. By the way, all guitar speakers are crappy. It might be what you want in a mix, but when you're using full range stuff like the analog synth and all that stuff, guitar speakers and IRs don't do it justice. In fact, I want to look on, see if I can find an IR of a JBL E120 or a D120. Those are much more full range speakers. I might be able to find an IR one of those. That might be something that would be really cool to experiment with. But yeah, the PR5's back. The AC15's gonna get the lion's share of the work right now because I'm still in the honeymoon period with that. But man, it feels good to have this PR5 back, and it sounds great through this power load. So there you go. There's my experiments of the day.